So in this video, we're going to take a look at John 7, verses 32 to the end of the chapter, to verse 52. So I'll begin, first of all, by reading the text. So John 7:32, I'll just do up to verse 36, or first verse 39 for the moment. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering such things about him, and the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple police to arrest him. Jesus then said, I will be with you a little while longer, and then I'm going to him who sent me. You will search for me, but you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, Where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go into the dispersion amongst the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying, You will search for me, and you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come? On the last day of the festival, the great day, while Jesus was standing there, he cried out, Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink. As the scripture has said, out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water. Now he said this about the Spirit, which believers in him were to receive. For as yet there was no Spirit, because Jesus was not yet glorified. All right, so a few things here about this verse. We'll note that the officers, the chief priest and the Pharisees, send to arrest Jesus, in the New Revised Standard calls as the police, are temple guards. And so they don't really have a police service like what we would have today. So think of the chief priest who has authority, over the temple and does exert influence in Jerusalem, obviously, but they have temple guards. And so, since Pharisees do not have authority over temple guards, they are being linked here with the decision of chief priests. So this time, the high priest is Caiaphas, but his father-in-law Annas was, also very influential. Annas had been deposed earlier on. Caiaphas has been a high priest for some time here, and ends up kind of historically being a very effective high priest as far as the Romans are concerned, because he has a longevity. So high priests are appointed because they are really political figures. And this family that Annas has was an influential family. He had a son who had been high priest, but he wasn't effective enough. And then Caiaphas is appointed, and he turns out to be effective, which means maintaining peace. As far as the Romans are concerned, what they want is no disruptions, no revolts, and it's the job of the high priest to make sure that the city, like Jerusalem, stays at peace. And so they can use whatever power that they have available to them in order to maintain control. And so that's what the chief priests are doing. Now, this chief priest can include more than Annas and Caiaphas. It can include a kind of a body of those who are leading figures associated with the temple, and their control over the area. Now, there's another example of Johannine irony, occurs in verses 33 through 34. So since Jesus is talking about going to his Father, so again, we have this situation where Jesus can say something and that's not understood. And Jesus talks in John's gospel in this way of saying one thing, meaning something else, but what he means is not understood by those who seek to kill him, or who are opposed to him, or who do not believe in him. So the Jewish authority thinks he's talking about going to the Greeks in the diaspora, or the dispersion. And it's interesting, the idea of going to the Greeks, using this term Greeks. When here in John's Gospel we talk about Greeks, I'm not so sure if we're thinking here particularly of people who are from Greece, or we are talking about people outside of Palestine who speak Greek. Lots of people speak Greek because that becomes kind of an international language. So do they mean just outside of Palestine, where maybe Aramaic is the dominant language amongst Palestinian Jews. But I mean, once you go outside, even inside Palestine, there are Jews who speak Greek. We have Hellenistic Jews who speak Greek. So are they thinking by Greeks? Are they going to non-Jews who outside of Palestine, or is he thinking about Hellenistic Jews outside of Palestine? So it's not really very clear what the reference to the Greeks refer to. Now, is it that John's gospel is written at a time when they know that the non-Jews are going to be preached to and come to believe in Jesus, or that there will be those who will come to believe in Jesus, and this is an allusion, as it were, to the future missionary activities. So, all not very clear at this point. Also, it's not clear where the scripture is that Jesus cites in verse 38. In verse 38, as the scripture, out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water. It's not clear where such a statement. Maybe there is a reference here, an allusion to Ben Sirach, what is known in the Apocrypha, or it would be in the Septuagint, in verses 24 through 32, where a similar saying occurs. And so is that the reference that Jesus has in mind? All right, let's go to the next few verses here, 40 through 44. When they heard these words, some of the crowd said, this is really the prophet. Others said, this is the Messiah. But some asked, surely the Messiah does not come from Galilee, does he? Has not the scripture said the Messiah is descended from David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David lived? So there was a division in the crowd because of him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. All right, so this division amongst Jews about understanding Jesus' identity. So who Jesus is. Some say he is the prophet, which most likely is reference to the statement in the book of Deuteronomy about a Moses like a prophet like Moses is supposed to come in the future, who will once again bring deliverance of God's people. Some say he is the Christ or the Messiah, and probably here thinking particularly of a Davidic Messiah, since the word Christ just means, anointed one, someone anointed by God. There could be lots of people who are anointed by God. The high priest is really a Christ figure. He's, in a sense, anointed by God to serve in that capacity. Some doubt that he could be the Christ, the Davidic Messiah, because Jesus is not a descendant of David. So this is a question about Jesus' lineage. So, nor that he comes from Bethlehem. So this seems to be predicted from Micah 5:2. Now, earlier, some Jews think that no one knows where the Messiah will come from. So this issue, some think he should come from Bethlehem. Others think the origin of the Messiah is unknown. So it looks like we may have different traditions or views amongst Jews about this, the orientation of the Messiah. Now, this is familiar to the synoptic discussion about Jesus' identity. You find it in Mark and Matthew and Luke. So it's interesting that John's gospel doesn't present Jesus as being a physical descendant of David. Now, actually, Matthew and Luke don't either. What Matthew and Luke's genealogy shows is Joseph as a physical descendant of David. And Jesus, as both Matthew and Luke attest, is, the kind of adopted father of Jesus. Now, one might say, well, the genealogy that we have of Joseph in those texts are also would apply to Mary, since you typically don't give the genealogies of women, that we are to assume that Joseph and Mary come from the same kind of family. They're kinsmen. And by describing Joseph, we're describing Mary. And so if Mary is from the line of David, then Jesus has a physical connection to David. Or it can be that Jesus does not have to be from the physical line of David. Mark certainly does not have any genealogy. You could be, if you are the Messiah, then you are the son of David, whether you are physically descended from him or not. But maybe some Jews thought you had to be a physical descendant. So it's an interesting note about the variety of views that existed amongst Jews about the lineage of the Messiah. Some, you don't know where he is from, who his father is, who's descendant, and others think, no, you have to be able to have some understanding of a connection to David. Which, of course, how would that be proven? How are genealogical records actually kept of people? You would be able to demonstrate that. But for the author, Jesus' identity is not sufficiently answered by identifying him with any of these monikers. It's not that Jesus is from Bethlehem or that he's from Nazareth or that he's from Galilee. The fact is that Jesus is from heaven. And until one understands that and accepts that, then you're really missing Jesus' identity. All right, we're going to end here by looking at verses 45 through 52. Then the temple police went back to the chief priests and Pharisees, who asked them, "Why did you not arrest him?" The police answered, "Never has anyone spoken like this." Then the Pharisees replied, "Surely you have not been deceived too, have you? Has any one of the authorities or of the Pharisees believed in him? This crowd, which does not know the law, they are accursed." Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus before and who was one of them, asked, "Our law does not judge people without first giving them a hearing to find out what they are doing, does it?" They replied, "Surely you are not also from Galilee, are you? Search, and you will see that no prophet is to arise from Galilee." All right, so some interesting statement. The guards here, the NRSV is rendering as the temple police, sent by the chief priest, come back without Jesus because they are amazed at his teaching. Allowing, once again, for a discussion where there's a misunderstanding about Jesus. The guards are asked incredulously whether any of the authorities or the Pharisees believe in Jesus. So this brings us to an interesting question about maybe the belief of Nicodemus, who seems to be amongst this group. The reader knows that Nicodemus is a Pharisee who'd come to Jesus' night. What we don't know is when Nicodemus leaves, what his relationship is with the Jesus movement. It's not clear what is meant by Nicodemus being one of them in verse 50. Do we mean by one of them, that is the author telling us that Nicodemus is actually one of the followers of Jesus, which the others do not know? So in other words, he's a secret disciple. Or by one of them, does it mean one of those of these authorities? I'm more inclined at this moment to think of Nicodemus as one of the authorities. I see Nicodemus as a sympathizer of the Jesus movement, but not yet having identified or have adopted the beliefs of others to follow Jesus. So most likely one of the authorities. Nicodemus reminds the authorities that their law requires that they give Jesus a proper trial. What Nicodemus may be alluding to here is in Deuteronomy 1:16, where that is expected. So they should not be seeking to kill him unless a trial is first of all held. Witnesses are brought. So we're going to see that what's happening here is these authorities who pretend or present themselves as trying to keep the law really are not keeping the law. And Nicodemus is helpful in showing this. So Nicodemus is attacked by suggesting he is a Galilean, so that somehow or another he must be from there. And he does not know that no prophet is to arise from Galilee, which is kind of a curious thing because there are prophets in the past who come from Galilee. But probably what is meant here is the prophets, the prophet like Moses. So the expectation is the prophet like Moses is not coming from Galilee. And I don't know why they would think that, why that's not a possibility. So a lot of kind of curiosities of things being presented as views that would have been held by these authorities, and yet we're not clear where these traditions would necessarily have originated from. All right, so that gives us a quick little overview of a few more passages out of John 7.